So in March of my senior year, when I was, I had just turned 18 years old, I was ready to finish high school, move on to, you know, graduate, obviously, finish my advanced placement exams, and I was planning to start at Canisius College the following fall. And I was looking forward to living on campus with my peers in the all college honors program. But then the next thing I knew, I woke up in a nightmare where I couldn't speak and everyone was lying to me, including my mom and dad. All these people whom I had never met were telling me that I had been in a car accident and that I had suffered a traumatic brain injury, or TBI. And I, kept thinking, that isn't true. I don't remember that. And I had to escape the nightmare. I felt like I had to run from this. And when the opportunity presented itself, I went for it. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I had to escape from this nightmare. I had to wake up. And when I tried to get out of bed, I fell straight to the floor. And it was that moment on that cold hospital floor. That's when I tell people that I woke up from the coma. I woke up to the reality that my legs and my body didn't work like they used to, and that I had to accept what everyone was telling me was true, that I had a traumatic brain injury and I was in a car accident. I also noticed on that floor, I saw on the calendar on the wall, had the first few days in May crossed off. And, last thing I remember was that it was February, March. And I woke up and I realized, or I had to accept that months had gone by without me knowing it. Months had gone by since my last memory. Although I don't remember it, I learned that an innocent trip out with some friends after school one day was when things changed for me. On our way back home, I was a passenger in my friend's car, and my friend made a left turn onto a busy road, and we were hit by a pickup truck at around 40 miles per hour, right where I was sitting in the back seat of her car. Right away, I fell into a deeply unconscious state. My heart had stopped beating. I wasn't breathing on my own. I was in pretty bad shape, but luckily, first responders, volunteer firefighters, they responded to my accident, and they administered epinephrine to jumpstart my heart, and they also intubated me so I could start breathing again. And then they knew I had to get to the hospital ICU very quickly. So they called on a medical air transport helicopter to quickly take me to the hospital ICU. All of my friends walked away from the accident, but I had to, be flown by helicopter to the hospital. I don't remember anything from the last day without a damaged brain. My plans were shot. My new focus was a far reach from anything I ever expected. I couldn't speak, I couldn't walk, and I couldn't even feed myself. College was a long shot for me, but my immediate goal was to focus on relearning how to walk again, to walk out of the hospital, and then across the stage at my high school graduation. I struggled to relearn all of the things that I once did fine, while all of my friends, including everyone in the car that day, were experiencing the last days of high school and going to prom. But I didn't focus on that. I focused on doing what I had to do in order to return to some degree of normalcy And through the help of so many other people, so many doctors, nurses, therapists in the hospital who showed such compassion, whom I had never met, they did what they needed to do to help me achieve what I needed to achieve. And after months of intensive rehabilitation, including physical, occupational, and speech therapies 5 days a week, I walked out of the hospital on my own 2 feet. 12 days after that, I walked across the stage at my high school graduation. I adjusted to my new life, relearning how to function again with many, many challenges along the way. And then 4 years after that, through determination and the help of so many other people and the focus to return to a life that I had always planned on living, I graduated from Canisius College with a degree in economics and finance, cum laude. Many people focus on an old adage and used to say to me that you only have 1 year after a traumatic brain injury to recover as best as you can. But I don't believe that that is even remotely true. My brain injury was almost 12 years ago now, and I believe that I'm continuing to recover from it. My philosophy remains that your brain thrives off experiences, and it doesn't stop changing with new experiences throughout your entire life, even after a severe traumatic brain injury. Today, I work a full-time job in compliance for NRG Energy. I'm also married, and my husband and I are currently eligible to be matched with a baby for adoption. I drive myself places, and I live pretty independently. I even make the coffee sometimes, and I do the majority of the laundry at home. I still have difficulty with a lot of motor skills, like speaking normally, moving around quickly, and working with my hands. And while I sometimes struggle to get dressed and tie my shoes, I really am truly grateful that I don't have any issues with my executive functioning or with language, and that I'm able to live a mostly normal and productive life. Through the help of others and learning so much about what others did for me to be able to achieve what I have achieved in my life and giving me the opportunities that I needed to take and that I did take to choose to recover from the traumatic brain injury. And I do some work in the community to try to, in turn, continue that wave of compassion to help others in the community who might be dealing with similar challenges. Outside of my full-time job, I work in the community to speak to high school students about motivation and adaptability. And last year, I delivered the commencement address at my hometown, the high schools that I graduated from. I delivered the commencement address at the graduation ceremonies. And it was just 10 years after I had graduated from the high schools. I also speak to graduate and undergraduate college students in rehabilitation science, like those that are training to become physical or occupational therapists, as well as professional therapists and nurses, about my experiences recovering from a traumatic brain injury. I encourage them to focus on the individual patient's goals to try to help them assess a way to achieve what they want for themselves. I believe that an individualized approach to treating traumatic brain injury or similar medical conditions eases the burden of grim statistical prognoses. When I first came into the hospital, my parents weren't given a lot of hope that I was going to survive, let alone ever be able to live independently again due to the severity of my injury. But because I had doctors and nurses that were able to ignore that and do what they needed to do to help me achieve my goals, I had less anxiety about recovering. So I like to remind students that recovery begins with the patient's willingness to recover, and it ends with the patient's goals being realized, and that their job as therapists is to help the patient along the way to get there. I love to share my experience with traumatic brain injury rehabilitation and recovery with others, because I don't want people to be discovered by the old adage that all the recovery that happens during a 1-year critical period after traumatic brain injury. I feared the truth of that statement, but when I reflect on it, I have continued to recover throughout my entire life and in all of the 12 years after my injury. Obviously, these opportunities weren't in my life plan 12 years ago, but I adapted my plans to use my experiences to serve others in the community who might benefit from my story. I was inspired by others to achieve my goals, to help others find ways to stay motivated after injury to achieve their personal goals.